all Mondstadt characters, their backstories, their lore, and who they are. I'm going to be covering every single playable Mondstadt character. I originally wanted to do every character in the game eventually anyway, one by one, but I feel like that'll take years to do, so I want to condense it a little bit and make a longer video covering every single character from each region, and I want to do every single region, and I'm going to start with Mondstadt. This list won't necessarily be in order or anything like that, but I am going to touch on the lore and backstories of every single playable Mondstadt character, starting with the first one that we actually meet in the game, Amber, the last outrider of the Knights of Favonius. Not only is Amber one of the most diligent and reliable members of the entire Knights of Favonius, but she's also the best glider in the entire world of Teyvat. But sadly, she is the one and only last outrider in the Knights, known to abide by the rules except for when she's gliding. She's had her glider taken away and her license revoked many times. We've seen Amber around to know she has a very outgoing and bubbly personality, but she can become fierce when it comes to defending Mondstadt from the abyss, monsters, or just protecting its citizens. Amber was a handful when she was younger, having limitless energy even at a young age, having so much enthusiasm and pep in her step, raised by her grandfather, her grandpa showing her a lot of love and devotion while raising her. Amber's grandpa was once a leader of a mercenary group in Liyue Harbor and was tasked with protecting merchant caravans, one day falling prey to a savage monster attack. He was the only survivor, saved by a doctor from the Knights of Favonius. He was too ashamed to return home and felt like he had failed, so he joined the Knights of Favonius. And he single-handedly founded the organization as the Outriders, trained each one of them personally, and began leading them on missions, which would lead him to find love in Mondstadt and settle down with a family. Seeing Amber's enthusiasm at a young age, her grandfather wanted to teach her everything he knew about being an Outrider, fully embracing Mondstadt and its culture of freedom. The Outriders actually growing into a pretty big division within the Knights. But 4 years before the game starts, Amber's grandfather left his coat and his sword in his office and disappeared without a trace. And with his absence, the Outriders would dwindle and be a shadow of its former self, slowly losing members to other divisions and not being able to maintain its own patrols and duties. But Amber would join the Knights herself and refused to let the Outriders completely diminish, and she would take over that division. To this day, we don't really know what happened to her grandfather, why he left and where he went, but it's said that he went back to his hometown in Liyue, Chinsu village. Her grandfather leaving is the first time in her life Amber really felt defeated and wasn't her cheerful, happy-go-lucky self, but in its own way was the catalyst for her to become who she is today. Because even though she still maintains her genuine and carefree personality, this helped harden her into becoming more serious and focused, inheriting her grandpa's determination, becoming a loyal protector of her homeland. And to this day, she also wants to find out where her grandfather went and if he's okay. Lisa Mincy, who is a librarian of the Knights of Favonius, and is a reliable person within Mondstadt that people go to with their problems. She's very easygoing and nonchalant, but takes her books and her duties very seriously. Lisa was once a prodigy at the Sumeru Academia, and even people like Sino within Sumeru looked up to Lisa and held her at high regard. But she would leave her studies and abandon the academia after 2 years because she was smart enough to know dabbling too far in forbidden knowledge and things you should not be learning can be dangerous and detrimental, so she refused to do this. She would then return to Mondstadt and take the position of librarian. Lisa is also very adept with potions and the elements. Weirdly enough though, Lisa is one of the few characters we don't know her origins, her parents, her lineage, or where exactly she comes from or how she was raised. I speculate that she's either a descendant or related to one of the Hexen Circle witches, probably M, due to their common love and obsession over books and stories. Lisa also loves drinking afternoon tea and having vegetable soup, but weirdly enough she has a phobia where she's terrified of pumpkins. Due to her vast knowledge of different things, her easygoing demeanor, as well as her being a kind and caring person, she takes a lot of people under their wing, and most of the young adventurers and residents within Mondstadt she lends a hand, such as being a master and teacher to raise her. who had no parents growing up. The Abyss Order has also teased Lisa to be much more important with a secret identity, so hopefully with future stories, we can learn a little bit more about Lisa and what she's hiding. This brings us to our cavalry captain of the Knights of Avonius, Kaeya, who is actually from Conria, but was left in Mondstadt as a baby and raised by Diluc's father and Diluc's foster brother. He is insanely confident and charming and witty, and actually very intelligent. He can even seem lazy at times, but he does take his work very seriously. His charisma alone has earned him the respect of almost everyone within Mondstadt, despite some of them also thinking he's a bit of a smartass, which he is. The Knights of Avonius in general have a code of conduct they follow, but Kaeya seems to have a bit of a gray area around him, which benefits and bites the Knights in the butt sometimes. He is willing and sometimes even takes a more backhanded or unethical approach to accomplish his goal or to get the job done. Kaeya has also never really been seen without his eye patch. It's implied that he got a massive scar on this eye due to being wounded by Diluc during a battle they had after Creepus's death. His full name being Kaeya Albrecht. It is definitely shrouded in mystery how much he's aware of Conria, his lineage, or the 5 sinners of Conria, but 2 members of the Albrecht clan around 500 years ago played major roles, helping lead the nation while King Ermin was unable to rule, and Clother Albrecht himself becoming the founder of the Abyss Order. Although we're not sure exactly how much Kaeya knows about the Albrecht family, their history, their current whereabouts or deeds, Conria and the 5 sinners, or even the Abyss Order for that matter, he refuses to talk about his past. Even when Jean demanded some history on him when he was joining the Knights, he obviously dipsy-doodled around the question. Jean also trusting Creepus and giving Kaeya the benefit of the doubt, not wanting to pry too much into his personal history or upset him. Because Kaeya and Diluc grew up together, they were like best friends. They were obviously step-siblings in a way. Because Kaeya and Diluc grew up together, they were obviously very close, like best friends and brothers. Until the day that Diluc's father died when they were attacked by Ursa the Drake, and Creepus used a delusion to save everyone, but died in the process. Kaeya and Diluc already being knights by this point, and Kaeya failing in his duty to be there on time. Kaeya always wrestled with the idea if he was loyal to Mondstadt, truly the nation he was raised in, or if he was truly loyal to Conria and his actual birth family and origins. Diluc was a prodigy and he lived in his shadow his whole life, but after this death, grief consumed them both in different ways and they drew their blades on each other. Kaeya felt guilt for not being there when he should have been, and Diluc, grieving, blamed him as well. But this would be the first time in Kaeya's life where he'd actually draw his blade against his brother, and this is the moment he gained his cryo vision, but severely hurt his eye and got a scar in the process. And now to this day he wears an eye patch to cover it up. To this day Kaeya still remains the cavalry captain, still as smug as ever, but is efficient in his duties. His brother despises the Knights of Avonius, and although their brotherly relationship will never be what it was, they have a mutual respect and understanding of each other, which we might as well transition into Diluc while we're here. Diluc being the heir to the Dawn Winery and the Ragenvunder clan. Obviously we know he grew up with an adoptive brother, Kaeya, but Diluc was an absolute prodigy as a knight and a young warrior. His dad Creepus loved him dearly and also wanted to be a knight in his youth, but failed and didn't have the raw talent his son did. He was not spiteful though and was so proud of Diluc. Diluc joined the Knights at a young age and became a prodigy, rising the ranks and passing his superiors in record time, becoming the youngest captain in Knights of Avonius history. He was also a much more laid-back and easygoing fellow. He also despises alcohol and won't drink it, even though that's his family business. He also met another young knight, also rising the ranks at a quick rate, whom he would form a lifelong and very close bond with, even a romantic relationship. This knight being Jean of the Gunhilder clan. His father, Creepus, was oozing with pride and so proud of his son. But one day, their caravan was attacked by Ursa the Drake, the dragon that Ilda Dore of Fatui Harbinger would later kill. Diluc might have been a better knight than his father ever was, but he was still his son, so Creepus defended him with his life, using a delusion to defeat the dragon and scare it off, but he would be fatally wounded and die in this process. Using delusions as a regular mortal is usually fatal, so Diluc's father had died. The Knights of Avonia should have also been present and failed in their duty, Kaeya being among them, arriving late. And the Knights of Avonius would try to cover up his death because the Knights of Avonius did not want the public and the citizens to panic and know their failure. They did not want to ruin or tarnish their reputation, so they swept his death under the rug, and this angered Diluc. He quit the Knights of Avonius on the spot and left his vision, going on a quest, nation to nation, to discover where his father gained the delusion. This would lead him down the rabbit hole of the Fatui and the Harbingers, where it said he was actually confronted by the Harbingers themselves, and he barely escaped Shaznaya with his life. When Diluc got back, he took over the family business in the Dawn Winery, and pretty much despises the Knights to this day, calling them useless, although he still has a tender soft spot for Jean, who is the acting Grand Master. But Diluc doesn't trust the Knights, and in order to actually keep Mondstadt safe, he acts as a vigilante, the Dark Knight hero, who fights back the monsters and the abyss in the shadows, doing what the Knights can't. Diluc may never be the easygoing, go-lucky guy that he was in his youth, but it cannot be denied he cares about the citizens of Mondstadt and wants to protect his nation. It only makes sense to talk about Jean and Barbara because they're from the same family and their origins are pretty much intertwined. They're both from the Gunhildr clan, one of the rich houses of Mondstadt. The Gunhildrs are to Mondstadt kind of like the Starks are to Westeros and Game of Thrones, only their words are not winter is coming, it's for the city of Mondstadt. This great house is known for doing the right thing, they take their duties very seriously, and they try to uphold the will of their animal Archon and the nation's freedom. Jean's mother was from the Gunhildr clan originally, and she married a churchgoer, and they had 2 kids, Jean and Barbara. And from a young age, Jean was the heir to the Gunhildr clan, so she was raised properly as a knight and very cordial. But after their parents split, her father went back to the churches and Barbara went with him to live with him and took his last name Peg. So now Barbara's last name is Peg and Jean kept the Gunhildr name and Jean stayed with her mother. Jean and Barbara are very close, love each other very much, but Jean kind of wishes that they could be a little closer. She just finds it kind of awkward and hard to actually get closer with her younger sister, but they're both very proud of each other. Barbara is known to be a bit awkward and clumsy, but she's very hardworking and with a very big heart. Often seen patching up our favorite adventurer, Benny Boy. Bennett's always injured because he's been carrying everyone in the whole meta of this game on his shoulders for 4 years. Now, Bennett gets hurt a lot and he's also pretty clumsy, so they have formed a really close bond. Jean joined the Knights at a young age, and while she was in the Knights, she would meet a young captain named Diluc, and they would form a close bond as well. At this time, Diluc was actually her superior, but Varka saw something in Jean, and he started prepping her to become ultimately the future Grand Master of Mondstadt. Currently, Jean is the acting Grand Master while Varka's away on his expedition, and she has been for the entire game's lifespan so far. She knows the burden and the weight of this responsibility, and she takes it in stride. Jean is very pragmatic, cordial, level-headed, skillful, stern, but also very caring when she needs to be. She is the only one that feels she might not be able to live up to it at times, but everyone else in Mondstadt rests easy. They're not even slightly worried that Varka's gone and she takes command. Everyone has complete faith in her. Sometimes she just needs to be reminded of this. Barbara also thinks Jean will make a great Grand Master one day, when she finally takes the role permanently. Jean's biggest weakness is that sometimes the burden is a little heavy on her, but that also is one of her strengths. She knows that she's not perfect, and she knows that she needs to seek the counsel of others around her at times. She truly wants to do her best, which makes her always striving to be better for everyone around her and everyone that's counting on her. This is what Varka saw in her and why she was chosen to succeed him to begin with. Barbara is not only incredibly hardworking at the church, but she's a great medic as well. So it's no surprise that Jean is the fighter of the family. She is nearly a flawless knight, harnessing the animal element, which is perfectly fitting considering she represents the nation of freedom better than anyone, so it only makes sense for her to earn an animal vision, where her sister Barbara earned the hydro vision through her healing and her caring for others. Jean has defended Mondstadt from the hordes of the abyss, monsters, and different threats countless times, and will continue to do so long after Varka relinquishes his command. Diluc despises the knights, but Jean is the one exception to that, as he views her as hardworking and deserves the praise that she gets. So he is willing to go out of his way to help her. While we're on the subject of the churches, this would be a great time to talk about Rosaria. Have you ever seen the movie Sister Act? I'm sure some of you have heard of it. Well, it's kind of like that, only instead of her hiding out in the churches because she's under attack or her life's in danger, she actually is the danger. Kaeya even says that she's probably one of the most practical people in Mondstadt. She's honest with who she is, what she likes and dislikes. She is very intimidating to the average person that doesn't know her, but she's just really no nonsense. Rosaria also has a very keen intuition. She's an excellent judge of character or ill intentions. And like I already joked about, Rosaria is a part of the church, but she never participates in any church activities. This often lands her in a bit of grief or trouble. She's also really doesn't have any loyalty to anything. She often mispronounces Barbados' name. She just doesn't care. But when you learn Rosaria's backstory, it makes sense why she's rugged and rough around the edges. She was born in a remote village but was taken from her home by a bunch of bandits who had killed everyone in that village. So they took Rosaria and raised her, taught her how to fight. Now this village could have been located in Shasnaya or it could have been located in Liyue. We're not 100% sure, but imagine your village is slaughtered and these bandits kidnap you and raise you from an incredibly young age to fight, never getting enough to eat or drink. But she tried to escape one day and they ended up catching her and told her that because she ran away she's a traitor and they would have to fight. But she ended up killing him and gaining a cryovision. Later, this group of bandits would reach the gates of Mondstadt where the knights eventually killed them all. But because she was so incredibly young, they decided to spare her life and thought because she was so young, maybe they could rehabilitate her. So they offered Rosaria a chance to turn her life around by going to the cathedral and joining the church. This did help a little bit, but we know that she's stone cold. She's seen and experienced too much. The Archons, freedom, justice, it's all a facade. There is no true justice in the world, not after what she's experienced. Now that she has a cryovision, as well as an expert assassin at this point, she uses the cover of darkness to dish out justice in her own way. Kaeya is aware of her actions and sometimes she's a little bit more aggressive or hostile towards enemies or wrongdoers than she needs to be, dealing out justice in her own way, but Kaeya sort of turns a blind eye most of the time, simply because he's got a bit of a gray area to him as well. And she is dealing with problems and threats that the knights would have to deal with anyway, so he's kind of just like, you know what? I'm gonna let that slide. You might have murdered them, but yeah, saves us the trouble. Forming friendships and close bonds might not be something Rosaria isn't really interested in, but she does respect her peers and everyone around her, and she will protect them if she needs to. Mondstadt did give her a chance to live somewhat of a normal life, so she is grateful for that. Next, let's talk about the wannabe knight. No, not you, our favorite girl, Noelle. One of the most genuine and humble characters in this entire game. Her only real weakness is that she lacks confidence completely. She's actually a very capable warrior and she wants to be a knight, but her own self-confidence usually gets in her way to pass the knight's trials. She is proven on many occasions very capable though, when someone's in genuine danger or they need her protection. She also was very shocked and a little bit disappointed when she did not receive an Animo vision because she loves the Nation of Freedom in her Animo Archon, but instead blessed with a Geo vision. But in contrast, it actually suits her personality more. She's sturdy, consistent, and protects those she cares about. She does not hesitate to help those in need. She's also incredibly hardworking. Currently, she's working for the Knights of Avonius as a maid, and Lisa believes her to have one of the greatest work ethics she's ever seen. Despite what people actually think of Noelle, she's actually incredibly stubborn, which is also why the Geo Vision actually makes more sense for her. Some notable things Noelle has done is stop a Shasnayan merchant who wanted to dismantle the wine industry in Mondstadt. She also saved multiple adventurers that were freezing and trapped on Dragonspine. Jean even has to keep Noelle from overworking herself, which is ironic coming from Jean, somebody that's known to not take enough breaks from her work. The blacksmith in Mondstadt even had to make Noelle a special claymore because despite her appearance, she's one of the physically strongest characters in the city. and she constantly breaks claymores, so he had to make her one special so that it would actually last and be durable for her attacks, strengthened with her geovision. After Noelle failed the knight's exam for the 7th time in a row, she saluted the acting Grandmaster Jean, and Jean returned the salute. When Noelle noticed Jean acknowledging her even after her 7th failure, she felt overwhelming recognition for her hard work and dedication. And this is the moment she received a geovision, which also adds to why she felt so conflicted by getting a geovision in that moment and not an anima one. But she views it as a good omen and a sign that she will eventually pass the trials. It's inevitable. Everybody already knows in Mondstadt, the only thing holding her back and stopping her from achieving her ultimate goal is just her confidence. Everything else about her is more than capable of being a knight 10 times over. Bennett is righteous and incredibly good-natured. Bennett is your typical kids anime show protagonist. He's incredibly good-natured, wants to do all the right things, help everyone. He's got great energy, he's optimistic. Despite all this, he actually has a relatively sad story. He was taken in by the Adventurers Guild in Mondstadt and formed a close relationship with a member of the Favonius Church, Barbara, who treats his wounds often. Bennett is known to have horrible luck. His passion alone is terrifying. Raised as an orphan by the guild after he was found in Natlan near the Mara Javari, it is assumed his parents perished exploring here. Why they had a child there is beyond me, but perhaps there's more to his origin than we realize, considering how odd that would actually be. Maybe his origin has a little bit of mystery that we'll learn soon in Natlan. It is stated that he was found in the Mara Javari area. An old adventurer had died saving this child, so the guild took him in and raised him. And because there was a lot of childless adventurers that always sort of wanted a kid, they were happy to raise child as their own and named him Bennett. The dying adventurer who saved this child also referred to him as the final treasure. So I wonder if Bennett has a very deep connection with Natlan. Bennett has also had the weight on his shoulders to carry this game's meta for over 4 years. What an absolute Chad. Eula is one of the only redeeming members of the Lawrence clan, one of the great houses of old Mondstadt, the most tyrannical of the bunch, who had slaves in the fighting pits, such as Vanessa herself, who ended up freeing the slaves and the city of Mondstadt for that matter. The Lawrence clan was the richest and most ruthless, and to this day, they're a shell of their former glory, but they still harbor these resentments. However, Eula is trying so hard to break away from these old habits and traditions of her clan. She wants to earn the respect of the people, and she's done plenty to earn it. But of course, old habits die hard, and people still have a hard time giving her the benefit of the doubt. Amber was Eula's first friend, which will come to no surprise to anyone. Eula's very proper and cordial, but she sort of despises the traditions of the aristocracy and the rich nobles. She's one of the most efficient knights, skilled in battle, reliable, and has completed countless missions being the captain of the reconnaissance company within the Knights. She has a solid relationship with all the other major members of the Knights, the captains, and the acting Grandmaster Jean herself. Also, Varka speaks highly of Eula and never saw her origins or her lineage as a reason to fault her. You cannot control where you're born and what family you're from, and Eula is single-handedly trying to change the way people view members of the Lawrence clan. Although she's made incredible progress, she has a long way to go. People don't forget, even after 1,000 years, the rich elites who enslaved people had them fight to the death, controlling people through sheer wealth and fear. It was Vanessa, the first ever Grand Master, that overthrew the aristocracy era and the Lawrence clan. And it was the Gunhilder clan that also helped this rebellion. And yet, Jean and Eula get along great. Eula is on the right track, it'll just take some time. Maybe one day Eula will change the way people think about the Lawrence clan forever. When it comes to Eula, you can never judge a book by its cover. Everyone's favorite wolf pup, Razor. A son born of 2 adventurers part of the guild in Mondstadt, and they named their child Razor because they felt it was a cool adventurer's name. Unfortunately, it's left very ambiguous what actually happened to them. It's pretty well speculated that they're deceased now, but they disappeared from Razor's life well before he could even remember them. But the child found himself in Wolvendome and was raised by the wolf god spirit himself, Boreas, who watches over Wolvendome, and Razor was raised with the wolves as one of the pack members, having almost next to no human connections only on few occasions. Razor is generally a good-natured person and considers anyone close to him part of his pack, but he will defend his friends and anyone he cares about that's in danger fiercely. He also dislikes the fact that although he lives with the wolves, he's not like them. He knows that he's a human. Boreas also doesn't really contact with any humans, but the few that do come to Wolvendome and are friendly, he is very nice to them. But for the most part, he's pretty skeptical of outsiders. This isn't to say that Razor never had any human contact though. Varka, the Grand Master of the Knights of Avonius, has made contact with Razor on numerous occasions, giving him and teaching him how to use the claymore, and then instructing Lisa to help him and guide him to learn and use his electrovision. This was a request to Varka from Razor's parents before they mysteriously disappeared. So Razor did get a bit of human contact before the game starts. Nowadays he has much more human connections in Mondstadt, different friends, and people he trusts. People also regard Razor as a very genuine but odd person. But one misconception about Razor is that he's a little bit of a slow thinker, and maybe not as smart as the average person, but that's actually couldn't be farther from the truth. He's actually much smarter than the average person. He was just raised and perceives things differently. People assume this because he's not familiar with human etiquette, sarcasm, wit, humor, and just typical human banter. He often speaks pretty slowly as well because he's not used to communicating with humans that much, which has become one of the biggest running gags in the community, explaining things in Razor language as we state. But that has absolutely nothing to do with Razor's intelligence, as he's actually a lot more quick thinking when it comes to things he's used to, in nature, disasters, being able to anticipate things before they happen when others cannot. It's just a matter of how he was raised. He's also known to actually avoid disasters when Klee enters Wolvendome. We all know what Klee's capable of. Razor's able to foresee this and prevent it. Razor also has a ton of courage. One day during a lightning storm, an abyss mage attacked and ambushed his pack. Razor felt so ashamed and helpless as the wolf pack who came to aid him was defeated by the mage. Fueled by this feeling, a burst of lightning grew inside him, and an overload of elemental energy was flowing within him. This is where he gained his electrovision, and to this day, Lisa diligently tries to teach him the ways of the elements and his power, helping him control it better. And someday, Razor will be the best of both worlds, living in nature with the wolves and being a part of human society in Mondstadt. I also wonder if Varka at one point was going to bring him into the Knights and help introduce him to society, but decided to leave him in the wilds, seeing that it was already being beneficial to him. If that's the case, it turned out to be true. Razor is a genuine guy. So despite it being sad that he was abandoned and not raised by his parents, he turned out quite well. We all know that Albedo is not a human, but rather a synthetic being or puppet or some sort of artificial being like Scaramouche, created by one of the 5 sinners of Conria, Rhindaughter, also known as Gold. She is also one of the Hex and Circle witches and a good friend to Alice, Klee's mother. Rhindaughter entrusted Albedo to Alice to live in Mondstadt, and this is why Albedo has formed a very close bond and is almost like a big brother to Klee. Albedo also feels at peace on Dragonspine and loves to paint and draw. He is one of the best, if not the best, alchemists in the entire world of Teyvat. Incredibly level-headed, intelligent, critically thinking, without any sort of ego to get in his way. And because the remains of the dragon Doran are on Dragonspine, Albedo almost has a sense of familiarity with that dragon, being that it was also created by his mother Rhindaughter. But if Doran was corrupted and attacked Mondstadt and was a threat to the nation, why isn't Albedo? Albedo also wonders if he's immortal. Ironically enough, even though he's a synthetic being, Albedo has a very strict and healthy diet, doesn't like to waste food, and doesn't like people doing things for him. But when it comes to Albedo, there's 2 big questions that we still don't have the answers to. 1. Why was he created in the first place, and what is his purpose? Was he created for a higher purpose, both good or sinister? Similar to how Scaramouche was created to hold the Gnosis for the Shogun as a prototype, was Albedo created for something significant in Mondstadt? Was he created to watch over Klee for Alice, being that their mothers were both good friends in the Higson Circle? Or did Rhine-daughter simply desire to have a child of her own? Who can really say exactly, but everyone in Mondstadt looks up to Albedo. I mean, Albedo's one of the smartest people in Teyvat, so whatever reason he was created for, he is more than smart enough and capable of to know that just because you were created for a purpose doesn't mean you have to pursue that purpose. He is his own individual, so I often wonder if he would even do anything sinister, and perhaps that's the whole point of his creation. To be a free individual, capable of living their own life and following his own desires. Regardless, everyone trusts Albedo in Mondstadt, including the knights and Jean herself. He is the captain of the investigation team, a genius alchemist, who is currently training another alchemist, Sucrose. Albedo is also fearful of his own capabilities. He's one of the few people in Teyvat that is capable of the art of Kaeya, a form of alchemy that was developed and primarily used by the people of Conria. The art of Kaeya focuses on the creation of life. Its capabilities are vast. The art of Kaeya was a major player in the Cataclysm. We all know that the Cataclysm was devastating to each nation simultaneously. It led to the death of 3 Archons, and as of now we know at least in Mondstadt and Fontaine, they were both attacked by dragons, created by Rhine-daughter herself. Who knows exactly how many monsters or creations were created from the art of Kaeya? And believe me, both Venti and Dainsleif are well aware of Albedo's potential threat, so they are keeping a close eye on him. Also, because Albedo's a creation, we have no idea exactly how old he is, but we know for sure that he was born or created after the Cataclysm, so he's at least younger than 500 years old. And being that Rhine-daughter created him and is now confirmed to be one of the 5 main sinners of Conria, and Alice has been missing since the game started, what are they up to, and what exactly was Albedo's purpose? Since they sort of hinted at Durin getting revived in Mondstadt, does this play into Albedo's bigger role and the purpose of his creation and why he was entrusted within the Knights of Avonius? At least we can all breathe a sign of relief, because Albedo seems to be self-aware of this and has no ill intentions on the people of Mondstadt. On the contrary, he goes out of his way to help anyone he can, and his genius level of intellect and alchemy has come in handy on so many occasions in Mondstadt. He is even going out of his way to train somebody, an apprentice, Sucrose. Sucrose and Albedo share a passion for alchemy, and although Sucrose is a very shy and timid girl, Albedo is somebody that she feels comfortable nerding out over alchemy with. She also idolizes him greatly, and although Sucrose lacks confidence in her own alchemy abilities, Albedo sees her as somebody very capable. They both also share a similar character trait where they prefer to engross themselves within their research and work, not really dealing with other people or social interactions. She's also associated with the Knights of Avonius, being Albedo's assistant and closest confidant. She spends most of her time researching bioalchemy, and has taken an interest and fascination with the elemental hypostasises, even being able to recreate one herself. Sucrose also finds it hard to relax or take breaks. The minute she does, she gets instantly bored and just starts researching again. Lisa even jokes that she's pretty well hopeless talking to people. She's way too timid to hold a conversation and just seems frightened all the time. And Sucrose gets especially scared around Jean and Eula, seeing them as both intimidating. Despite her social anxiety though, she's very compassionate and humble, and finds it easier to connect with someone when talking about someone else's academic pursuits, like Klee or even Klee with her bombs and destruction for that matter. She also has a good relationship with Timaeus, and kind of ironically, she was the one that helped Klee create the Humpty Dumpty explosions. Now, despite knowing that Sucrose had amazing academic potential from a very young age, we don't really know her origin or where she comes from. It's speculated that maybe she's got common ancestry with Diona, but we do know in the manga another very renowned scientist in Teyvat with a similar hair color spent quite a bit of time in Mondstadt. This individual is also pretty renowned in his research and experiments. You know what I mean. Wouldn't that be wild if Sucrose's actual father was Iltadore? One of the segments at least? Maybe that's why Sucrose is a prodigy at such a young age. Maybe her father is the second Fatui Harbinger. And when he spent some time in Mondstadt after killing Ursa the Drake, he found a little romance in his downtime with a woman that has similar ears to Sucrose. Just a funny thought, but you gotta admit it would be kind of funny. Other than that, we really don't know much about Sucrose. She's a very timid and easily frightened individual, but she's incredibly caring and compassionate, and as her confidence grows, she's going to be one of the most important people in Mondstadt, assisting people through her alchemy, research, potions, and her critical thinking. The Spark Knight Klee, however, doesn't really help Mondstadt as much as she destroys it. Klee is obviously the daughter of Alice, the leader of the Hexen Circle and probably its most powerful member. Somebody that we're still waiting to see. And like I already mentioned, Albedo pretty much mentors and acts as a big brother watching over her. Could very well be why he was created for all we know. But everyone in the Knights of Avonius also watches over Klee. Everybody speaks very highly and holds Alice at a very high regard. So they all make a point to look after the Spark Knight, even when she gets into mischief or trouble. Despite Klee being a literal child and having the same temperament and demeanor as a child, she actually is pretty smart and comes up with her own nifty creations. And despite her age, she's still an absolute powerhouse. It can also be assumed that she's a long-life species like her mother, having an elf-like appearance, and we know Alice was around before the Cataclysm, even when young Mika was just a little fox. So it can be easily assumed that Klee also has a long lifespan. What we don't know, however, is who Klee's father actually is. Is he from Mondstadt, Conria, or among the stars? Maybe she was even a creation like Albedo. We really have no idea the context of her creation, conception, or anything like that. Despite her being destructive, she's not an evil or mean-hearted child. She's very energetic, outgoing, and loving. She makes friends with everyone almost instantly, no matter if she's in Mondstadt or any other nation. You just gotta keep a close eye on this one because, well, due to her age, she is very naive. She will get into tons of trouble if you let her, or turn your back for a second. Being that Albedo is one of the most cool, calm, and collective individuals in Teyvat, never getting rattled, being level-headed as he is, makes him the perfect person to watch over Klee, because he has tons of patience for her and what she might get up to. Also, Klee is not fond of people arguing, often scolds Kaeya and Diluc when they get into an argument, and calls Diluc a grumpy, weird grown-up, which always makes Diluc laugh a little. Honestly, it would be kinda cool to see Klee as a grown-up because even at her really young age, she's able to terraform the entire landscape of Mondstadt. She is quite powerful, so I would love to see if she follows in her mother's footsteps and has the same potential and power. You know, I haven't had any luck this summer really going fishing. Maybe I should take a page out of Klee's book and just start throwing dynamite into the lakes. Maybe I'll catch something. The character responsible for me wanting to have a skip the dialogue button desperately in Genshin Impact, Fischl, because I cannot stand the way she talks. Fischl is basically a cosplayer, a girl who has a companion that travels with her, a raven named Oz, who refers to her as the Prinzen der Verurteilung. You see already, I can't stand the way she talks. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation, but this is exactly why I skip her dialogue. Currently serving as an investigator in the Adventurers Guild in Mondstadt. Despite her weird quirkiness, she does have some pretty unique abilities and she is quite useful. Due to her parents and upbringing, Fischl became obsessed with fantasies and stories and role-playing her favorite characters and benevolent princesses in the stories. Always speaking in a polite and formal manner, which again greatly confuses literally everyone she talks to in Mondstadt. Because of this, Oz usually translates and puts it into razor or simple terms for us. She speaks this way almost 100% of the time, so when she does actually talk normal and break character, that often confuses people even more. At one point in her life, the way people looked at her for role-playing and kind of looked at her as strange did bother her, but now she could care less. She continues to role-play and be who she wants to be. Outside of her role-playing though, she is well-behaved and pretty kind. But she has a bit of sass to her. Ironically, Lisa of all people views Fischl in some of the highest regards because Fischl keeps such good care of her books and always returns them on time. Despite Fischl's current situation, she doesn't hate her parents. They have a solid relationship, but because they were absent so much during her upbringing, She found comfort in the books and the characters she would roleplay. When her parents decided she was old enough to kind of drop this childish behavior, it only engrossed her more into the roleplaying, and she kind of gained an obsession of this. This is where she received a vision, and Oz materialized from this moment. Her parents kind of just accepted this is how it's going to be, but they refused to go along with her ruse and her roleplaying. Whenever Fischl stops acting, she gets an overwhelming feeling of anxiety. I guess when it really boils down to it, Fischl's somebody that just has a hard time letting go of their childhood or what made them feel comfortable in their most insecure and uncomfortable moments. Her real actual name is Amy, and now she's come to terms and grips that she is both Amy and Fischl, and that she simply just likes to roleplay, and that's okay. That is just who she is. She's not ashamed that she's Amy, but she also embraces that she is Fischl, the Prince and der Verurteilung, from the realm of the Irmanaktra. Personally, I don't really care what you do, Fischl. As long as you're not included in the story quest that I have to play, I really don't care what you pretend to be. Diona, who is an incredibly popular bartender in the Cat's Tail Tavern. A rising star in the wine industry, which is ironic because Diona hates everything about alcohol, drinking, and running a bar. She would destroy the alcohol industry if she could. According to her father Draff, Diona is in a bit of a rebellious stage. While Diona adores her father and idolizes him in her youth, she can't stand the change in his personality while he's drunk, pretty well shattering the illusion and pedestal she puts him on. You know, everyone thinks their father's their hero, but as you get older you see them in a more realistic and just human light. Diona thought it would be funny to mix drinks terribly and destroy the industry from within. Unfortunately, she was blessed by the spring fairy of Springville with the magic touch to make drinks delicious. Now she can't make a bad drink. But she's also unaware of this, so she tries her hardest to make terrible drinks and they end up being delicious. She cannot understand it. Also, because of her cat-like genetics, she can see well at nighttime or in the dark. She also doesn't care for Diluc much, blaming him for her father's alcoholism and problems. Despite Diona being sassy, she does crave companionship and feels that her father is often neglecting her, being out drunk on one of his stupors often. So she does take comfort in the companions she has made, like Klee or the Traveler. But when her father isn't drinking, he's known as the best hunter in Springville. Well, Diona's one of the best mixologists in the entire region of Mondstadt, which is so ironic and funny. Mona Magistus, the astrologer, an apprentice trained by Barbara Luth, one of the Hegson Circle witches, trained in divination and reading constellations. Mona takes her craft and her training very seriously. If only she learned how to budget. Mona is broke. Broke is a joke. But she was finally able to scrounge up enough to rent an apartment in Mondstadt. Due to her skills, Mona can always tell when a person is lying, also being able to sense someone's true intentions even through a facade, which is why she knew the balladeer was a threat to us in that moment, when he was prepared to strike down the Traveler, posing as a friendly wanderer from Inazuma. Mona's more or less a pretty practical but proud person, and spends all of her spare money on anything associated with astrology, different materials. It's often after the fact when she realizes that she has no more mora for her other essential daily needs, sometimes going days without food because of this. She really takes her astrology seriously, and she honestly is incredibly competent when it comes to her divination. She rarely gets a detail wrong, but she's incredibly straightforward and blunt when it comes to her divinations, which people both like and dislike about it. Even if the divination is incredibly harsh, she won't hold anything back or any details. She often too gets together with Klee and Albedo, because both of them are interested in unraveling and unveiling the principles of this world, the hidden secrets in the stars and Tevat, the mysteries that even us the players are trying to solve to this day. But shamelessly, Mona, although she does enjoy her chats with Albedo, she has a second motive to getting together with him. She often just wants to enjoy a free meal, because she can't afford one. But despite what she thinks, Albedo is completely aware of this, he just doesn't care. And she'll often complain to him about that old hag. And being that Albedo is a creation of Rhine-daughter and Klee, the daughter of Alice, they all have something in common. They are the successors of their mothers, or their teachers. Mona also makes contributions to the Steambird and Fontaine with her astrology. I guess she's kind of like the people that put the horoscopes in the newspaper, only hers might actually tell you something useful. Mona also views her vision as just something practical and a tool to help her with her work. It doesn't really mean a great significant deal to her. She enjoys the benefits that come with it, because having power is always good, but really the gods and archons too are also bound by the rules of Teyvat. Mona seeks to find the truth of this world beyond that, hidden amongst the stars. Something even more significant. So while others view a vision as a sign of the divine and a higher authority, Mona sees it as something more minuscule in the greater scheme of what she's looking for. Which, I gotta say, does actually make sense, and she's not wrong. When it comes to the Hoyoverse, there's so much more than just Teyvat. And we haven't even scratched the surface of what's underneath. The Abyss, and so much more. At this point, Mona's been living in Mondstadt long enough. She's formed a pretty good relationship with almost everyone there. People often go to her to get some readings. But one thing I can say for absolute certain, there is not a single chance she has to retire. Not a chance.
To the Knights of Favonius. Greetings, everyone. This is Varka.
Today, Junior?
Mika, who was a young knight within the Knights of Favonius. He really doesn't have much of an outgoing backstory, crazy origin story, or lore. He grew up in a pretty average, normal, run-of-the-mill home within Mondstadt, joined the Knights, and now he serves as a frontline surveyor. He grew up in the Schmidt family. He has 2 parents that love him and an older brother who is a bit of a drunk and much more outgoing and less shy than he is. I also find it kind of cool because my mother's last name was Schmidt. I also have German origin, and because Mondstadt's based off Germany, I thought that was kind of cool reading that and actually learning that. So yeah, Mika's last name is Schmidt, even being one of their key members. Mika treats every task very seriously, but he is also very bashful and timid at his young age. Although most of his peers assume he'll grow out of this. Mika's just one of those people that once he warms up to you, he's pretty then well outgoing. But until then he's very, very shy. However, he likes to keep his distance. You just know when Jean called him out to read a letter from Varka in front of everyone, he was dying inside. It's like that time in 6th grade when you had to read in front of the whole class. Once a year that I had to do that, I know that was the day that I annually faked sick. And I'd do it again. Mika also prefers to avoid higher-ups and higher members within the Knights, the captains, the Grandmaster, the acting Grandmaster. He likes to observe them and understand their personalities before properly interacting with them. Not just as a sign of respect, but also just to know how to approach the conversation with them. One of his greatest flaws, though, is he relies on other people to make the decisions. He doesn't like to take command or take the lead. Despite his young age, though, he is very mature and responsible, taking care of his older brother when he comes home. His brother is known to drink quite a lot, so Mika will actually take care of his chores around the house to help his brother avoid getting into trouble. And what's even more funny is although he has a good relationship with Klee, because he's a surveyor, he often has to redo the maps of Mondstadt after she's done terraforming the landscape. Being that he is a surveyor within the reconnaissance company, Eula might be the only higher up and captain that he's somewhat comfortable with. Despite all Mika's faults, his favorite pastime is closely linked to his primary duty of the frontline surveyor. He actually has a passion for unexplored regions, landmarks, the terrain, recording topographical data, drawing accurate and effective maps. He actually genuinely enjoys this as one of his favorite pastimes, so his duties within the Knights are best suited for him, makes him so efficient at what he does. Whenever all of the different divisions within the Knights of Favonius gather at the headquarters to meet up, all of the Knights get together, the higher up and the subordinates, he often tries to avoid conversation as much as possible and slip out soon as he gets a chance. Sadly, most people within Mondstadt or even the Knights don't really even know what he does. The most people know him for is being the younger brother of Huffman, who is more well known because he goes out socializing and drinking. Despite Mika being maybe a low-key character within Mondstadt, there's no denying that what he does and the work he puts in is very crucial to the Knights of Favonius activities, how they go about their work, their patrols, defending the city from the Abyss or other threats. He is a very key part of the Knights, and he will only continue to get better as he gets older, more mature, and more confident. Now, if you're still watching the video, all I have to say is thank you very much. I do hope you enjoyed the video and maybe learned something about one of these characters from Mondstadt. As some of you already know, I originally wanted to do an individual video on every character in the game at some point, but I soon realized that that would probably take years to do with all of the other content I want to make, the different games I want to cover, and just with my own actual life, my job and everything else. I just didn't find I would ever have the time to do that, so I thought it'd be nice to actually condense it a little bit so I can cover each playable character from every region, and I wanted to start with Mondstadt. I'm going to be doing every region. Liyue will be next, and then by the time I get to Natlan, I'm sure we will know the majority of the characters by then. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did you enjoy the video? Obviously you would have noticed I didn't cover Venti because I'm going to be making an Archon video in itself, so he'll be in that. And with that said, like and subscribe, help grow the channel. I really do appreciate y'all watching this far, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.